Namaste and welcome to Poetry Lab with Dr. Parikshit Singh. As you know, viewers or readers, I hope you're readers and lovers of poetry too. We've been, discussing this collection of poems by Dr. Singh. It's called Satya Poems to My Father. And the next poem is a wonderful poem. It's called Invictus. And it's also translated from Hindi, apparently. So we might request Dr. Singh to read us the Hindi poem as well, if he has access to it easily, or we'll get it for you next time. But 860, sir.
Invictus. Let them know I came. I, wordless, formless, swallowing the embers of myself, brought the shiver of my heart and bathed it in blood. But let them know. Their veils will not flutter in the silence, nor their palaces crumble in the stillness. Only some rude flowers of flame will bloom at the crossroads in which these dry tears will spill as dew. Only this. Let them know. I came, but some day this muteness will speak more than their statements, this quiet intensity sting greater than hurricanes. And what is more unbearable than the echo of silence? Which force will not tumble at the screams of the soundless? Let them know. I came. But the consciousness that has been stripped as the Himalayas, the consciousness that has been ripped as the deserts, the consciousness that has grown bare as dry rivers, the consciousness that has surrendered to the zero, will come again. Let them know.
Yeah. On Invictus, first of all, it means the unconquered in Latin. But for all lovers of poetry, see, we've been talking about so many poems and so many poets. So it's called intertextuality, but there's a whole world of images and other poems and poets that enter into a collection such as this. And recurrent influences we know, you must have heard earlier, Eliot is one of the major ones, but there are many others. We saw Rimbaud, we saw Mallarmé, and a whole set. Now, last time we talked about Melville and Moby Dick, one of the greatest American novels. But Invictus is a poem by William Ernest Henley. We had all forgotten it. It's about a poem. I mean, it's about a kind of declaration of resilience in the face of suffering, darkness, sorrow, defeat, apparent defeat, that is. But the reason that it became famous, as far as I know, but you can correct me, is because of Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela recited this poem, Invictus, during his imprisonment in Robben Island. And when I visited Robben Island, I think I saw the poem there on the wall, but I could be completely wrong. But I know that he had actually recited this poem. And I think a movie was made and it also became famous. The movie was called Invictus and it had Morgan Freeman, who acted as Mandela. And so, with your permission, I can read out. It's a very short poem, it's not very
Yes,
long.
please.
Yeah, I pulled it out for our,
It's a favorite. Yes, please. I'd love
for
to
our
hear.
podcast. I pulled it
Yes.
out. Oh, you can read it too if you have.
No, you. I would love to hear you.
Okay. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade. And yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Now, when I was reading through this volume, I remembered some of this, and I thought that it was a great tribute to your dad, frankly, whom I knew a little bit. He had a lot of integrity. He was a very, in my view, a very courageous person. I mean, he rode the wave. He was very popular. He was very powerful. He was like the main media in charge for chief ministers, and people used to flock to his door for favors. And then he joined politics. He maybe started his own outfit and he kind of got marginalized, but he took it all in his stride, and he never had to bow his head because he always did the right thing, in all circumstances. So, and people like this exist, and they become examples, they become exemplars. Obviously Mandela was one such person, and the images in this poem are, of course, images of, the straight gate, is the gate to heaven in Christian terminology, and that, you know, the way to hell is easy and paved with good intentions. So it's a very wide road to heaven, sorry, to hell, excuse me, and the way to heaven is very narrow, straight, you know. And the punishments on the scroll, because they believe in the day of judgment, it's like the Egyptians, your heart will be weighed against a feather, right? So if you've accumulated a lot of evil, whatever, and the scales will dip down, you're not going to have a good time, And then the Christians came up with purgatory and all, the Catholics. But anyhow, the point is, what the poet is saying here, what Henley is saying is that I'm willing to face the scroll in which all my deeds are written, like Chitragupta, recording. And yeah, the angels will read out, and I'll stand up straight because, I don't mind facing those punishments because I've lived an upright life, So anyhow, and there's one more thing I wanted to actually point out to viewers when I again first read this poem. It is, the poet often says, let them know I came. Now, what is that? To me, it struck a chord because there was a poem called The Listeners by Walter de la Mare, which in my ICSE syllabus I had to study in ninth grade. And it's all
Yes.
about this traveler who comes, and he keeps a promise, okay? So he comes in the moonlight, he knocks on the door, and there's only silence. Nobody answers him. And then he says, tell them I came, I kept my promise. And there's no answer. And he knocks. He said, tell them I came, that I kept my word. Now, remember what I said about Satya? You keep your word, you live up to your name, because in India, fundamentally, you're given names which are very, very high in terms of ideals. Parikshit is a very high name. For those who know the story of Parikshit, he was a very, very just king, right? So now the first thing is that not all of us can live up to our name. I agree, but the name becomes an ideal for you to remember and aspire. And I remember a very sort of guru I met, and he said, so I asked him, like, what do you suggest? What do you do? He says, just live up to your name. I began to think, how can I live up to my name? Because Makarand means honey, it means nectar of flowers and means sweetness. I don't think I'm very sweet as a person. I don't know. I try to be very gentle and nice. Anyhow, but then he said to me, he said to me, let Makarand spread everywhere, everywhere.
Yes.
He waved his hands like that. So we have to live up to our name. And so Invictus means that the poem celebrates the person, Dr. Satyanarayan Singh, who lived up to his name. Anyway, that's how I read it. So please tell us whether you had these poems in mind. Whether did you ever have the listeners in your poetry syllabus at any time by Walter de la Mare? No. Okay.
So I never had a syllabus. Remember, I went to medical school.
Yeah, but
My
till 10th standard, everybody, if you did ICSC, everybody had to read some poems and all like that.
Yeah, so all these poems, and we have a mutual friend who introduced me to these poets, and when I was young, I used to love to read. The last two lines were my favorite. What is that? Captain of my ship. I'm the master of my soul. It was a powerful, and then of course Ayn Randian days. Everything we were in that. We have to live to our fullest truth and honesty and
And,
integrity.
and,
All
and
authentic.
Iqbal too, you had quoted Iqbal.
Yes,
Khudi ko kar itna buland.
yes,
Yeah?
yes. Very. So we read. They were very powerful influences. I loved this listeners. The first time I read it was when I was in the US. I was doing my residency, and I read it. And there's a story that Hardy had written all these novels. He loved these poems a lot, and in his last few hours he asked his wife to read this poem to him. The last poem that was read to him was the listeners, and then he became peaceful and quiet. He asked her to read that poem specially before his death. So this has a we you know now that you look at the creative process, listeners has been a very powerful poem in my life. I truly loved it. And then of course Sri Aurobindo, our one of the great critics that whom I have read a lot and you have read. He also there's a letter he wrote about comparing the listeners with another poet, and I forget there was another poem, and it's how he describes it. And Walter de la Mare, a great poet.
And completely forgotten, overtaken by the wave of modernism.
But Eliot loved him. If you Eliot wrote a poem just for Walter de la Mare. I don't know if you remember
Yes,
that.
yes, yes, yes.
Yes, and he wrote a special tribute to Walter de la Mare in Terza Rima. So,
Tazarima. Because
yeah,
he
so
used those rhymes himself.
yes, yes,
So I'm so glad that the resonance that I caught, I never had an
yes,
occasion to ask you, but so the listeners is very much here. Is Henley also here, Invictus? And were you aware of that?
yes, yes,
Robin
yes,
Island, the movie,
yes.
and Mandela.
Yeah, I knew about Mandela. I had not seen the movie, but Henley, when we were young, I think 18 or 19, that's when I first heard him, and I just fell in love with those two lines. And especially for my father, it was against fighting against odds, odds of a kind that normally we would give up or give in, and he fought against them right from his childhood. He did not come from a background where he had all this backup for him, as we say in the Indian setting. He had to raise himself, whether it was a political battle, and he would take on anyone. His stories that he told me were a little, you know, to me were very emotional. Even now, he would go and and they were people of a different caliber. When India became independent, they fought all this the discrimination that happens, the Varna, the Vyavastha, the Harijans, as Gandhi ji used to call them. He used to force the major restaurants to allow them to come in, and at risk of injury to himself. He did a lot of things that you would be proud of. Govind Ballabh Pant, he went and challenged him to his face. I mean, no, can you imagine doing that to the Home Minister of India, challenging him and saying, we didn't know that the Home Minister of India was so scared of the communists. They had gone to invite him to come to his college, and he said, there are some reports that there would be some black flags, so I won't come. And Govind Ballabh Pant was a giant of Indian politics. And my father had gone with his principal, and then they got up and said, uh, and so he said, "We are sorry. We had come to invite the Home Minister of India. We didn't think we would be inviting someone who was afraid of black flags." And they walked out. And look at the caliber of these people. He called them back. He had and his head used to shake. He was old by that time. His head, he had this benign tremor. His head used to shake. So he said, if this is the case, then I will come.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, today, you can't see the home minister. In fact, you can hardly see any minister at all. And they're not going to come to, a college unless it's some big like IIT or something, and they'll come for a centenary.
Yes.
I was at IIT Madras. They had a centenary and they had a special program, and they were conferring degrees. So the PM had come, Mr. Modi. I was also there. So it was a very different kind of event with the big
Yes.
cameras. So those days were so different. So to go back to the poem, I just wanted to ask you that
Yes.
I also felt that you adapted it. It's a very Indian poem. It's about Shiva. It's about the Himalayas, and it's about, and then you have this line about only some rude flowers of flame will bloom at the crossroads. That famous poem of Thomas Gray, elegy written on a country, churchyard.
Yes. Yes.
Full many a flower, I mean, they bloom and they pass away,
And
completely unrecognized. So did you have some of these ideas? So like with Shiva, Himalayas, and this, unsung hero, like what was the thing you were trying to convey here? That was my question.
so there was when I wrote this poem, I was kind of a little annoyed at the world, that you had such a capable man who had come here, tremendous ability. The man was a brilliant administrator, immense ability, and he was not recognized for his abilities. And who cares about recognition? He was not allowed to fulfill the potential he had. The world blocked him at every point, and yet he did something. But I always felt he could have done so much more. So I was a little PO'd, if I may use the word. And so this came out of a tremendous state of annoyance with the state of the world. And look at such a great talent had come, and he was unrecognized. And yet the true pratibha, as in our tradition, is something even deeper than that. So, but that remains untarnished. That Shiva, that consciousness that came, that had come, let them know I came and I will come again.
So yeah, so I wanted to again sort of read those lines also from Walter de la Mare, Elegy written in a country churchyard. And I mean, he starts with this, the boast of heraldry, the pomp of power, and there are people who, away from all of this, also have something tremendous to offer. So I'll just read that last stanza, which is so famous, everybody quotes it. Full many a gem of purest ray serene in the dark, unfathomed caves of ocean bare. Full many a flower is born to blush unseen and waste its sweetness on the desert air. And see, you say here, only some rude flowers of flame will bloom at the crossroads. So it's a similar line. Yeah, so this point, though, I mean, like India in a way is famous for neglecting its own, and trampling on those that give their all, and unless you've got, some foreign recognition, nobody cares. I mean, it happened to Ravi Shankar, it happened to Mother Teresa. You name it, anybody who serves, the society is not recognized by the establishment. In fact, they're all pushed aside. But I think also, I mean, you can tell me, you can correct me, but I also feel that the common people recognize and love such people. So whenever they
Yes.
walk around, they'll go up to them and say, Namaste, sir, kya haal hai, kaise hain? So the society and the establishment are very different in India. So the society remembers but the establishment is a use and dispose culture,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. Yes.
And, you know, I know so many really capable officers, you know, who've retired. And they were so good. They were so honest. And then they're just discarded, you know, they just go into the woodwork. You see them at India International Center every evening. Some of them are at the bar. And unless they have political favor, you know, they're just completely discarded. So it's a very sad commentary on our culture, which, you know, denies recognition. And then the opposite is also true. There are so many of such people. I don't want to name anybody, whether they're major generals or lieutenant generals or ex-IAS, IPS, IFS, and they never give up. They're always holding on to something. They've got some trust they're promoting, they're doing something, they're always on TV in some shouting match. So now, if you are a person of dignity, you're self effacing, then you kind of retire. And these people who are very loud and pushy, they're always pushy. They're, you know, and it's so funny at times, whenever some VIP or dignitary comes, they push everybody else aside and get photographed with them. And I wonder, like, what is it? You still want derived glory? You know, you've got such a long, distinguished career, and you still just want to be photographed with some person in power. I mean, I had that experience, you know. The Home Minister, Mr. Amit Shah, was in Pondicherry, and I was invited as one of the people to meet him. And as soon as Mr. Shah came, you saw all these people, and it was at the university, so there was a very big function. The registrar, you know, the VC, all these guys, they pushed everybody else aside, you know, and they all got photographed, you know, with the Home Minister. And so this is, I mean, now in this poem, you're kind of pointing to some of these cultural traits that we have. And there's also the anger, you know, that why is it like that? So you say, I, wordless, formless, swallowing the embers of myself, you know. It's like you swallow your pride, you swallow your, you know, but it's like, I'll come back. So let me ask you that. Now, in Walter de la Mare, the person fulfills a pledge he made long years ago that he would come back. Now, what are you saying? Is it that there'll be a reappearance and then all the recognition will come? Or is it the son who's trying to say that, hey, dad, what you couldn't do, I'm going to do for you? I don't know. Is it a recognition vicariously so that, look, you know, you have that in Bollywood, by the way, you know, the son fulfills the father's greatest ambitions and says, look, wherever you are, I've done it.
So this is our, our Indic culture. We believe that the soul comes back, rebirth. And of course, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what rebirth is. But obviously, that personality is gone, the mind, the vital, the body is gone. But something, the essence, may return. And my instinct is, this is my perception. It was very powerful for a while, that he will return in a different, uh, uh, say, name and form, obviously, but for a different mission. One thing that was there in his life that I believe was a very powerful element was the spiritual side. And at the end of his life, he expressed the regret that he did not pursue knowledge. He only pursued karma, work. And I assured him that it is not necessary to know, because, as you know, the more we know, the how little we know, right? Knowing intellectually. But yeah, opening up the jnana, as we talk about, I believe he had a great thirst for it. He had a great respect for spiritual teachers. The ones whom he believed were genuine, he had a great respect for them. And he allowed that freedom, he always gave me. That was one of his, probably the greatest thing as a father. So the son has a great responsibility in our tradition to let the father finish his journey, not just the journey of life, but the journey of death. And although I'm the younger son, the elder son supposedly has a responsibility. But since I'm conscious of certain things all these years, I it almost came to me that I have to kind of go in this journey with him. And it was not a conscious process. It's almost like almost as if I went with him to a certain extent. I lived it. I lived his parting, and it was a painful wrenching away. But then there was the realization finally, couple of things that resolved it for me. One is the final realization that he will come back as to do something special of a different order. And that brought peace to my heart. Yes, he could not fulfill his highest potential, but he had even greater potential, which he will come and fulfill in a different order. And I think he was that spiritual life he has to lead. I think he's ready to come and live a higher spiritual life, which will be kind of capping it. Although the way he ended his life was a beautiful end, a spiritual end, but I felt that he's going to come back, and that was, as a son, I think I can invoke, and I have the power to invoke his soul to come back in a certain way. And so, using that power, I believe my instinct is he'll come back in a way that will be good for the world. He always wanted to do good for the world, and he had that inner seeking. Now, this could be just an imposition from me, but it was a very powerful feeling for a while, and I think that comes out here.
Yes, totally, totally. I think so. And I guess both the points, kind of come out in this poem. That is, the son will fulfill the father's unfulfilled mission, so to speak, because that's also part of our tradition, but also that there is a recurrence, there is the possibility of, because it's an endless journey for us. So
Yes.
we don't say rest in peace. I want to say that to all our readers, and whoever is saying that and saying Om Shanti, that doesn't make sense. We say go to the higher light or go to the higher level of consciousness. But when you said knowledge, yeah, knowledge is an obstacle, as we know. I mean, I'm reminded of the famous opening of the Shiva Sutras, where the first Shiva Sutra, the first one is, I think it's Jnanam, Chaitanyam Atma. That's the first one.
Chaitanya
So
Atma. Yes.
Chaitanya Atma, right? And the second one is Jnanam Bandha.
Yes.
So knowledge is an obstacle. Even the
Yes.
Ishavasya Upanishad says that. So anyhow,
Yes.
that's a completely different topic. But let's end here. It's a very powerful note on which to end. And then we will do another short episode on a very important poem that follows, but it's actually before this, about space to space. So with these words, thank you, Dr. Singh. Thank you, viewers. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. If you love poetry, do write to us. Let us know what you think. And we want to take this forward with your blessings and support, of course. Thank you and namaste.